This is a film about the term addendum in architecture. We set about conducting a series of live tests using found objects and models in the City of London.
Metronome represents a building in a city, and over time they might fall out of sync with one another. And the addendum, in this case, is meant to make them go into sync again.
Two elements can support each other and create a mutualistic relationship. So with the house of cards, you put the cards together and then the cards stand, each relying on the other one to stand.
We have no city, no streets, no houses, but a chaos of dirty, rotten sheds, always tumbling or taking fire, with winding, crooked passages, lakes of mud and rills of stinking mire running through them. They had so favourable an opportunity to rebuild London, your most august town in your world, and either have kept it to its old dimension, or if it was reasonable to let it swell to a larger, they out for your public good, to have guided into a regular and commodious form, and not have suffered it to run into an ugly, inconvenient, self-destroying, unwieldy monster.
That's so I was essentially looking at junctions. I think that's the simplest way to put it. The confluences of various different types of infrastructure and where they meet at these junctions and their effect on the surrounding building. It becomes one environment, one sort of organism where there are no longer these very clear moments of friction between various infrastructures. And my position is in favour of the former, where you sort of realise, and it's very visual, the way in which these things are coming together. Essentially, the addendum is the cast. The addendum is something which expresses something about the camera which isn't normally known, isn't visible, immediately visible. In a way, the point that you make the camera sort of non-functional is part of it. So to make something redundant, in a way, I think is quite, I say, revealing.
For me, it is more a process rather than an element, an evolution rather than replacement. An act of addendumization, when addition appears as an infection taking over the body, mutating into a new form that changes the function and the physical appearance of an initial object.
Well, in this case, the bread was the host, and the addendum is something that you add to it to give it like the strength that it had at the beginning. So if you take the bread apart and peel off the crust, then the structural properties are destroyed. so it's losing something. And within the addition, the addendum, you add something to it which gives it strength again.
As to answer basic question, what is addendum? I like to reformulate that question to ask what specific condition is the addendum response to, which basically defines the situation under which addendum is or should be brought to existence. My understanding is that of addendum being added in an attempt to rescue, like if pacemaker is added to heart, imitating its behavior in order to prevent death. In architectural terms, addendum as a rescue means to preserve building from threat of complete replacement or demolition.
So basically, I'm looking at the fitting of the addendum in the city and the side effect of this fitting. So basically, the places that it doesn't fit and it fits. Trying to understand how this penetration, what could it do to London?
Addendum is like adding something, so it had to be added. But so basically, it's add appendix in the book. So it's adding and it changed the story of book. The story of book is same condition as like program in the architecture. So I think addendum in the architecture is like change the program.
The reason why I'm attaching a lamp to another lamp is to have this idea of where I would utilize an object which was planned for a precise function and exploit it for another different function that, as I've noticed in Tokyo, is happening in the electricity poles that can be found all around the city. The pole was my first observation in Tokyo, and the interesting feature about it was, or at least how I decided to look at it, was to divide it into two different parts. So it would be the pole as a structure that holds all these other elements attached to it, like the fuses or the cables or the transformers, or, as I said, those additional elements that have been added throughout time. And once I started looking at this pole, I've noticed two other similar situations at two other different scales. One is at the scale of a house, so it's a house I found in Kamakura, where probably the owner of the house, in order to expand its potential, added this infrastructure made of scaffolding. Where then he added like a little surf bar / shop, and it became also a storage space where he could like store his bikes or have a little shower booth for the surfers. And the third one, which is the last one, which is the bigger scale out of the three, is the highway junction in Tokyo, and how the poles that surround the roads in a way serve, like, kind of work in the same manner as the electricity pole, as the scaffolding attached to the surf house. As I said, they were not like initially planned. And so these three scales are the three different addendums to the city. So the pole would be the addendum to the sidewalk, the scaffolding to the house, and the highway to the block.
No two columns look exactly the same, but they can stand next to each other. And it could be argued that they are equally responding to a context. but they show very clearly how many different readings there are of the city. Furthermore, I think it's in the program of the Koban not to blend in completely with the city. They seem to be hiding in the city by virtue of employing any architectural style whatsoever. What if there was a standardization to these Kobans? They all look the same. Would they be more present to us? Would we see more of them than if they are this ambiguous body of boxes?
In Tokyo, I was quite attracted by junctions between different types of infrastructure, namely expressway, underground metro lines, rail, ground level roads, pedestrian access, and the way these confluences come together, the treatment of these junctions, and the effect it has on the commercial and residential buildings that surround the junction. So my three cases are Sangabashi, Ginza, and Shinjuku. My sort of argument for this is that in the situation of conflict, typified by Sangabashi, we end up with spaces which are much more generous. The ground plane is still visible. There's still a normal level, whereas in Shinjuku, for example, there's no such thing as a normal level ground plane, and everything, the materiality of the spaces and the nature of the spaces are all sort of normalized. They become the same. As a unit, we're now attempting to bring these observations and concepts to London. We've chosen a range of sites such as Camden High Street, Peckham Rye, London Bridge and Centre Point. For example, I'm looking at the South Bank in Waterloo, as it has similar infrastructural demands to the junctions I've focused on in Tokyo. Having identified the situation at the South Bank as one of collaboration, my agenda is to break up the flat, congruent layering of infrastructure and introduce the element of drama present in the junction of conflict in Tokyo. In my view, the recent imposition of retail space around the Royal Festival Hall is very awkward, as it introduces new contradictory programme to the area, and yet attempts to blend it seamlessly into the site. My project, therefore, is to somehow reposition these elements, or perhaps introduce a new element of infrastructure that creates areas of conflict and makes the inherent friction between the elements visible.
Yeah, but I think the addendum must come at the end of something. That's, I think, the main point. That's what I think is the main point about addendum. Something has to be finished and done with, and then the addendum comes afterwards.
Thank you.